Have you ever frogged a project and now you've got a big ball of yarn or a mess on the floor and you got to wind it all into a ball? Or let's say you only used half your skein and now it's kind of floppy and it's going to come apart and get all messy. The best method that I've used to clean up that ball of yarn or that skein of yarn or a frogged project is to use my yarn winder. So today I want to show you how to use the yarn winder. And this yarn winder I actually got off of Etsy, but it's going to be the same concept for any yarn winder you use pretty much. Although I think this one's actually a lot simpler, kind of fun and addictive to use as well. When you use one, you're gonna come out with this nice, clean little cake of yarn. The greatest use I found with cake yarn is it's a lot easier to use on my circular knitting machine. The yarn tends to come out much smoother than, say, a skein of yarn, and definitely when using a circular knitting machine, it's a lot easier to use a cake of yarn versus a ball of yarn. Knitting machine, the ball of yarn tends to pull and tug at certain angles depending on how it's rolling, whereas if I use the cake, I can put it underneath the circular knitting machine feeder and the yarn pulls out really smooth and easy, really at all, and I'm not struggling really at all with the cake of yarn. A skein of yarn can also be troublesome when using a circular knitting machine because the only time I really use a yarn winder is when I've frogged a project and now I have a bunch of yarn everywhere, and instead of rolling it into a ball, I'll just use the yarn winder and put it into a cake. Or if I know I'm going to go into using my circular knitting machine, then I'll go ahead and cake the yarns. If I had time, I would definitely cake all my yarns and then you would see less of a mess over here. All right, what you see here is the yarn winder, the one I got off of Etsy, and then here is the yarn. First thing you'll want to do is make sure that yarn is not wound up like this because it'll make it really hard for you to wind it so that it's going to easily pull from the center skein. It's always easier to do it from the center than the outside, I believe. And I'm going to go ahead and place that on the ground. The other thing you want to look out is for the other end of the yarn, and you just want to make sure that is steering clear of the working yarn because that really has a tendency to find its way and get tangled with your working yarn. And sometimes what some people like to do is they put whatever yarn that they're using, they might wrap it around the center here and just wrap it around, tape it into place, and then that way they know what kind of yarn that they went ahead and caked. First thing you want to do is take the working yarn and place it through the little piece right here and snug it into the little crease there, and this is going to be the center of your yarn. It's going to wind around that piece. Keep an even tension on your yarn as you wind so that your cake is evenly distributed and also that it's not too tight so that stretches out the yarn, and it's not too loose because it'll just break apart. All right, so we're nearing the end. So all I did at the end was I just pulled the cake. I took off the center, rolled about a foot of the yarn around the outer portion of the cake just to keep it secure, and I just tucked it into itself underneath. And that's all I did, and that's how the cake turned out. Look how large that is. It's as big as my hand. I hope you enjoyed watching how to use a yarn winder, and I hope you learned something from it and it encourages you to get one yourself or feel more confidence in using your own yarn winder. And again, I recommend these nice aesthetically pleasing ones that you can find off of Etsy. This one in particular is called Fiber Artist Supply Company. You could also get these off of Michael's or Joann's or some sort of box store. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you learned a lot. Best of luck to you in all your crocheting and circular knitting projects.